Creating a license to steal. Welcome to the show. I'm Jeff DeForest. This is my man Toby producing the program here. We'll feature our usual suspects of handicappers. We've now expanded and extrapolated on the level of degeneracy on the program because we have college basketball to talk about. And you tell me, Toby, that you're already killing it on college basketball. See, I love this. You young guys never lose. Did you ever experience the pain, the agony, the aggravation, the desire to reach for a cyanide cap after every ball game that most of us veteran degenerate gamblers have experienced? You guys are riding a magic carpet, it seems like, to nothing but victories. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I mean, college basketball is back. There's nothing to complain about. So I've been doing great, but I haven't had any of those instances yet, with sports betting. Hopefully I don't. But I mean, right now, when you're young, it's like you're kind of just playing with not a lot of consequences if you're not, betting a lot of money. So we're just going to keep the number low. Hopefully we don't reach for any cyanide caps or anything anytime soon.
I had a couple of occasions for it last week. It was a tough week, and our guys, first time sub 500 since we started the show. I do other shows with these same handicappers. They've been winning week after week. Although one of the keys to survival in this whole endeavor, this degenerate gambling endeavor, is to be able to survive tough times. And maybe hang in there. Maybe you pull back a little bit. Maybe you're not betting as much. You're not betting 5 units. You're betting one, or until you break the slump. But I think we went 6-8 combined last week, so it wasn't a great week for us. But nonetheless, at least it wasn't not a complete disaster, not a catastrophe, not a total burial. But I don't know if you experienced any of this, Toby. I was in on two tough beats personally. I had a small amount of money wagered on both games. The first one was Duke, University of Miami. How do you lose from this position? It's almost impossible to conceive of. Duke, with Manny Diaz coming back, I mean, he was much maligned by the faithful, maybe deservedly so. Maybe maligned's the wrong word to use there. Maybe he was actually like a shitty coach. It could be. And the cliches started to apply, and everybody was using him. Well, you know what? He's a good defensive coordinator, but he's not a head coach. All right, we've heard that about a million different guys. They're good at this, but they're not really head coaching material. Miami's been going through that for the last 20 some odd years, ever since Butch Davis. And they've been trying to find the right guy, and they think they have him. But here's a great spot. Duke comes into town. Manny Diaz had the team, I believe, off to a 6-0 start. I think they dropped their next two coming into this ball game. And Miami has been just eking out victories by the most outrageous of methods on road games with Hail Mary passes that looked like they were caught. But they're still winning, and they're in there undefeated going into that game at 8-0. They're laying 20 in a hook. Now, we've talked about this on the show, and I think it's something that people have to consider, and that is the crystal ball factor. I don't know where you weigh in, Toby, on the crystal ball factor, which is, and if you can assign a number to it, I think Mario Cristobal, being the opposing coach, is worth 7 points a game to the other team in terms of the point spread. He is going to cost his team about a touchdown a game with his lousy game day coaching, poor clock management, lame play calling, going for fourth downs in situations where you shouldn't, not going for them in spots where you really should, where it's mandated by any form of statistic or analytic data that you're going to go by. And so anyway, we get to the third quarter of this game, and what's happening? Duke is up 11 points. I'm getting 20 in a hook. I'm essentially up 31 and a half points. So what do you think the final is in this ballgame? 53-41. They lose by 32 or 31. 53-31. They lose by 22 points, and I lose to the spread in an impossible situation. All right, so maybe you can deal with that and say, all right, extended garbage time really didn't help me in that spot. And then on the pro side, I don't know if you were involved in this game. Did you have any taste on the Philadelphia Eagles last week in their matchup against Jacksonville? Nope. That was so ugly. I mean, they're dominating the game. Jacksonville can't get out of its own way. Doug Peterson's contract's already in the shredder. They're ready to get rid of him. The Eagles settling for a bunch of field goals, Tony Sperano-esque maybe, but they end up ahead 22-0 in the ball game, and you're figuring, okay, this is in the bag, laying 7 and a hook. And then it turns out they're life and death to hang on for the victory outright, and they end up not covering by winning by 5 points, and you end up on the losing side in a game That was a thorough domination by the Philadelphia Eagles. So a couple of tough beats. Took them on the chin. I needed a cut, man, after last week. A lot of people did, but we're going to come back strongly this week. And we're going to start it out in a good spot here, Toby, with our good friend and professor, who has to be doubly elated as he comes on the show and joins us here, because not only do we have college football professor, but we have college basketball, which I know that you are a big advocate of, and early season college basketball. Toby and I were just discussing kind of a funky thing. You're figuring the major powers are usually going to cover these fat point spreads that they're laying against lesser lights teams that you never even knew existed, like Carolina Christian and what else did we see? Maine, Fort Kent. Schools I had no idea when I went through the Barron's Guide. I never even saw these schools when I was trying to figure out where I was going to end up in college. First of all, how are you, Professor? Good to have you on the show. And how excited are you about the beginning now and the opening of college basketball season?
I mean, very much. Monday was a fun night. You had Monday Night Football, and you rolled that right into Gonzaga and Baylor, which figured to be a hell of a game. Except Baylor decided to come out and play no defense in the first half, so not as great as maybe we anticipated with that early season matchup. But we shall see. I know you ended up having an exciting one as Syracuse went to the wire with Lemoyne.
Lemoyne, yeah.
I don't know if that's a college or a guy, honestly.
You know, it's funny. We used to play Lemoyne when I was on a couple of the freshman teams there, and it literally was like an extended high school at the time.
Okay.
It was just a free victory on the slate. I believe they've beaten Syracuse in that they may play annually, and I believe they've won a game at one time, which
I
sent
mean, it
Jim
could be
Boeheim into
worse.
therapy.
You could be a Villanova fan and have Columbia, who are like the dregs of the Ivy League, just beat the holy hell out of you last night. So, could be worse. Sometimes just escaping is enough.
Kyle Neptune might be looking for another planet to land on. No, he's had 2 seasons in a row replacing Jay Wright, who did an incredible job there and ran an outstanding program all the
And
way through.
nobody talks about how handsome he is the way they did with Jay Wright.
No, and Neptune, what? He's missed the tournament 2 years in a row, and then he gets beaten by Columbia, trounced in, I guess, what was that, their second game of the season?
Yeah, and like a run and gun style game too, which is not Villanova's style. And I don't watch a lot of Ivy League basketball, but is not really a style noted in the Ivy League in general. So
Yeah,
interesting game.
no doubt. I mean, so what are you seeing? Is there a strategy, any kind of general concept that you use early in the season when it
I
comes to
mean, I
college
would I
hoops?
would indicate a couple of things, and then if I had you have gotten clobbered with Baylor the other night against no, I think really college basketball in particular, unless you really feel strongly about a roster advantage, which these days is very difficult to contemplate because even if you manage to put together a monster squad, you don't know how long it's going. Again, Baylor's a good example of this. They got some key transfers. The big kid from Miami, whose name I'm blanking on for some reason, even though it's a weirdo name. Uh, but even under those situations, even if you know you have the talent, you know how long it's going to take in the season to blend together. So, my advice in the early season would be watch a couple of games, see who looks strong, and then proceed from there.
I tuned in late during garbage time of the Gonzaga Baylor game. It was already out of hand. I didn't realize that was Mark Few's son. Did you
Really, you
see
thought
what
it
he
was
posterized? The guy from
yeah,
Baylor just absolutely annihilated him on a slam dunk, and it was one of the more ridiculously lopsided posterizations that you'll ever see with a guy attempting to block a dunk, and then he was laid out on the floor there. That was Mark Few's kid that was just sprawled out
it
there.
was. He is not. He's got a big future in coaching, maybe not. Norchad or Omir is the Miami transfer for Baylor, whose name I always
Oh
blank.
yeah, no shit. I
Always
mean,
been in
a hell
Miami
of a
for the last
rebounder.
couple of years. He's a player. Really was one of the few guys who actually put up a decent effort on Monday night. But again, Baylor, a lot of talent. But again, even when you have a lot of talent at this point in the season, you don't know how long it's gonna take to come together.
All right. Are you looking at some college basketball for us this week, or strictly with the
No,
college
that'll
football
honestly
games?
we'll get some more action next week on that. Not a lot of feature matchups. I guess it is tomorrow night. You do have Kansas and North Carolina, which is a top 10 matchup. Kansas, I'm showing 7.5 on that. I wouldn't be inclined to lay 7.5 in a feature matchup this early in the season. So if I'm going to go that way, I would definitely say point towards taking the points. And then Saturday, the big one is Houston and Auburn. I don't know what the total is going to be, but I would, anytime you're talking Houston in a feature matchup, you at least have to look at the under. So if you're looking to dive in, those would be sort of the directions I'm pointing. But off the top of my head, no, I would not be looking to dive in
Uh,
on anything until at least next week. I think next week you get the big feature. Is it next Tuesday? I believe you get the big tip off. Yeah, Kentucky plays Duke, and Kansas and Sparty play. So probably next Tuesday would be when I'd start to point at it.
All right, sounds good. So let's look at some college football on the slate for this week, and we've already had a couple of games. I
We
got
did.
touched up last night booking some guys' action on Western Michigan. I ended
What
up
do you
with
mean you got
Western
touched up
Michigan.
on? Oh,
Northern Illinois destroyed them. I was
right.
handed
You went
Western
against
Michigan.
the Huskies in the opening of Maction. Like, what's wrong with you, man?
Well, I was a darling Cinderella team for you and all degenerates. What year is that? That was like 15 years ago, maybe.
I don't think it was 15. It might be 10. But
Might be
honestly,
10.
they've been kind of our darling throughout the entire Maction era. So really, it's not a 1 year. We're big Northern Illinois fans when it comes to the Mac.
No, that was great. We used to roll into Fishtails there on a night where they were having a pro jam musically, and we'd be over by one TV screen screaming and yelling for a Northern Illinois Tulane game every time they scored. Yeah, yeah! And then finally, we got thrown out of there because we were actually louder than the people that were playing music on the stage, which was just a few feet away. All right, and that was a great discovery by you because everybody was riding that, and it was with Bitcoin advancing all of a sudden, and people were making score after score
Chandler
on the Mac.
Harnish was the Pied Piper of that era for us.
It was phenomenal. All right, what are you looking at this week, Professor? Let's make some
Well,
money.
the one area we've consistently had success is Friday night, and there's another Friday night spot we like, and that is Cal flying across country to play Wake Forest. You look at Cal, 4-4 overall, which is probably surprisingly a little bit to the better than they would like. But you look at their East Coast results, and they're not good. Last time they came east was to Pitt, loss, or before that, and lost to Florida State, which in and of itself at this point in the year is starting to say all you really need to know. Couldn't beat Florida State. Did beat Auburn on an early season West Coast trip, but it was in a game where Auburn turned the ball over 5 times, and they only won by 1 score. Wake Forest, on the other hand, sort of turning around in the ACC, won 3 of their last 4, including a kind of underrated win a couple weeks ago against the UConn team that's pretty good, and beat NC State at NC State. So, top that off with going out west and beating Stanford last week, which anytime you make that road trip, it's pretty good win. Cal has to do the opposite and is laying 7 on a Friday night. We will take Wake Forest on the points. Deacons seem to have found their offense again under Dave Clawson. That slow mesh concept seems to be finally, and I could get it. New quarterback, couple new pieces in the offensive line. That's a hard offense to run because it's unlike anything in the country. I could see where over the course of a season they would get better and better, more effective at it. So we like Wake in this spot. Again, road conditions for Cal not particularly favorable. You look at the matchup here in terms of offense and defense. Neither team offers a lot of defensive resistance in this point, which would again make me less likely to want to lay a bunch of points on the road because you don't know if you're getting the stops. So Wake Forest plus the 7 at home Friday night will be our first stop there, Def.
All right, first pick for the Professor, Wake Forest, getting 7 points against Cal, a team that our buddy Trey West, who's going to join us later on, has been having good success with both ways, betting for and against them throughout the
Well, we'll
season.
see how he feels about it then.
He has a pretty good read on the Cal Bears. He's been very, very successful, and I think he's 3-0 and picking both for them a couple of times and against them in that game against Florida State. Although we did have to sweat that one out. All right, what else do you have for us, Professor?
Feature game of the week, which usually we don't like to dive into, but we think there's a pretty clear pick here, and that's Georgia laying 2.5 at Ole Miss. Have not been fans of Ole Miss. They beat us last week. Looking to get a little revenge here. I think Georgia has got things sort of rolling at this point in the season. People point to that look at Florida and say, well, they struggled. Well, they struggled, but they still won by 2 touchdowns. And they had to do it while facing a total adjustment on defense from Lagway, who's more of a running quarterback, to the third teamer, who's an absolute pocket passer. Not a bad performance. I didn't think it was a bad performance. Other people, but the one thing with Georgia, they tend to slow start on offense. Ole Miss might be the cure to that because their defense is not particularly strong against the passer. So you can see Carson Beck get off to a good start. You look at the Georgia defense, vicious against the run, not as good as they usually are against the pass, but still in the top 60. I think Georgia 2.5 is an easy spot here. I don't have any faith in Lane Kiffin or Ole Miss, despite the fact that they did go the wrong way on us last week.
All right, well, we've seen these numbers, and they're hideous with Franklin from Penn State in spots against top 5, top 10 teams. I didn't realize Lane Kiffin was this lame in that category. And I'm not sure is some of that
To be fair to him,
justifiable by circumstances because
Yeah.
he's had teams that didn't measure up. Because 1-11 in his career against top 5 teams, and 3-15 against teams in the top 10.
I think one of those is while he was at USC, and the rest were when he's in less advantageous positions. Let's be honest. If you're at Tennessee, when he went there, it was in full rebuild mode, and the SEC East was very strong. Then Ole Miss, look, even if you get Ole Miss to peak performance, they're probably at best third in the SEC West, and you're going to have a couple of games against Alabama. I mean, Alabama and LSU, and probably an East team here or there. So yes, he's been in a disadvantageous or less advantageous position, but he's in a less advantageous position right now, having to play a Georgia team that seems to have course corrected a bit after that Alabama loss. And again, the thing we noticed with Georgia is these Kirby Star teams, they tend to struggle against mediocre opponents and tend to play their A game against top level opponents, as we saw in Texas a couple weeks ago.
Kentucky beat Ole Miss, gave Georgia all they could handle in a 13-12 thrill in Manila type of classic. And then LSU handled Ole Miss after they started in ridiculous fashion against a bunch of cupcakes and were putting 50, 60 points on the board every game. So interesting matchup. You like Georgia laying 2 and a hook against Ole Miss. So that goes with your Wake Forest play. What else do you have on the ticket today?
It's funny you mentioned LSU because that's where we're going, down to Baton Rouge. Alabama going into LSU, laying 2.5 on the road in a night game in Death Valley. Now, normally that would mean take the Tigers in the points because Death Valley is a rough place to play at night. But you look at LSU's performance against Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago, and they did not look like they have seen a running quarterback at any point in their life during that football game. Now, they've had a week off, but I don't know how much I trust Brian Kelly to make defensive adjustments at this point in the season. I think Milroe will give them a significant problem, similar to what Texas A&M presented him with the running QB. I like Alabama minus the 2.5. It's a tough spot, but I like the Tide, particularly buoyed off of I think that last wild card seed in the playoff projection that came out this week. I think that'll give them a much needed mental boost headed into this matchup. We haven't been LSU fans really. Big LSU fans at any point during the season. They can pass the football, but it's really the only thing they do particularly well. And I think Alabama will manage to go down there and get the victory out of that.
You're not a big Brian Kelly fan in these spots either.
Look, Brian Kelly's been inconsistent, but he's pulled some upsets over the years. But again, you look at guys who have certain bugaboos. Running quarterbacks have definitely been one of his over the years, and you saw it crop up against a couple weeks ago against Texas A&M. Elko made that second half substitution away from Wegman, and LSU's defense looked baffled, like they didn't understand quarterbacks could run or pass.
All right, we've got 3 in the bank. You want to go for a 4-bagger here, Professor?
Yeah, we are, and I'm going out on a limb here. You may have some people on the show pick against this one. I don't really understand it, but I'm bucking the trend with a lot of sharp players I know here who seem to really like Utah +3 in the spot against BYU. I think BYU has really become the most disrespected team among the gambling community throughout the course of this year. To me, I make this like a 6-point game. That when you look at the course of Utah's season, they have completely lost the page. Uh, they did have the quarterback situation, but they can't seem to rebound and get that back. They are miserable against the run by their own standards. Only 89th in the country defensively against the run. That is not Utah football in the least. BYU, on the other hand, they run the ball very well, and they have a mix of a passing game. So I don't really understand this number. And again, I don't understand why everybody's jumping off on this number for Utah. I realize it's a rivalry game, but we are deep enough into the season, 8 games played apiece. We have a pretty good read on both these teams, and there's really nothing negative to go with on BYU. They played a couple quality opponents. They've handled business in both of them. They have played some road games where people thought they were going to lose. They, were, I think, relatively big dogs to SMU early in the season. I want to say they might have even been double-digit dogs in that game. Yeah, okay, 12.5. They were, not inconsiderable dogs. I think it was a 4.5 at UCF a couple of weeks ago. Um, Again, consistently disrespected. I don't understand it, and I don't understand as someone who's seen Utah like 5 times this year. I don't get why people think Utah is just on the verge of a turnaround. That this should be a close line. Utah just lost to Houston 17-14, who's probably the worst team in the Big 12, uh, and gave up 10 points in the fourth quarter to do it. So I don't understand this number. I think you should take advantage of it, even though, again, you're going to get a lot of people. So and so's picking Utah. A lot of big names in the community are picking Utah. I say buck that one and go with BYU. Lay the points here.
All right, sounds good, Professor. We wish you all the luck in the world with these selections. We have Wake Forest getting 7 against Cal. We have Georgia laying 2.5 against Ole Miss. Alabama laying 2.5 against LSU. BYU laying 4.5 in this one against Utah. Always a pleasure, my friend. Good luck with everything. Thanks so much for being with us here on License to Steal.
I'll talk to you, Def.
All right, the Professor, ladies and gentlemen. We bring on the most dapper, probably the best-looking guy in the handicapping business here, Scotty M. Joins us here on the program. Scotty, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Defo, how's everything going? Make America great again. What do you think?
It was a little depressing for me. I went 0 for 4 on the stuff that I was looking for in the election. Was tearing up the tickets. It was kind of like a day I had a couple of weeks ago when I never cashed a ticket at the track. So just like you were tearing up those Yankee World Series tickets because all the guys in your office are big Yankee fans, it was a disaster for me. I was overwhelmed. It may as well have been a tsunami, the red wave, the way it came over me. And, of course, the marijuana referendum went down, Amendment 3. And then what I thought was just absolutely ridiculous, Amendment 4 also went down. So let's face it, we're in a cracker fucking hillbilly state here in Florida. And it's tough to get our point of view represented by the people in government. But I'm going to forget about all that because we can still gamble our brains out. And we have virtually everything on the plate. I mean, between NHL, NBA, college basketball, college football, the pros, we have a game tonight. It's good to have you with us so we can try and sort some of these things out. And I know you're looking at a couple of the games that the professor was also interested in. So we're going to start out. You had an opinion on this very same Ole Miss Georgia game.
Yeah, I'm going to totally disagree with the professor. No disrespect to him, obviously, because he does his work. But I think
this is what makes America great, my friend.
Yeah, well, listen, that's why you have options out there. But
yeah.
I'm totally disagreeing with him on this game. I just think at this stage right now, based on what I'm looking at going into this matchup, 569 yards per game total offense for this Ole Miss team. That's no joke. 42 points a game is no joke. Yeah, you could say, well, they didn't play the caliber opponents, but I've been making a lot of money with teams like that all year. With Indiana, for example, they say they don't. All they do is win and cover. So I don't. I'm looking at this matchup. To be honest, I think Georgia had a tough battle last week against Florida. Bottom line, they didn't play extremely well. If they play like they played last week against a team like Florida, against a team like Ole Miss and they're building the way they're scoring on offense and they can show up on defense, I think this is a huge dog. I don't care about power, number 2 against number 8. Everyone jumps on, we'll take the highest seed, because they're ranked higher. Come on. This game is a live dog. This team can play. Ole Miss is for real. They just blew out Arkansas, who's been playing close with everyone. They battled Texas A&M. They've been battling teams all season long. Ole Miss goes in there and just blows them out. I mean, they score over 60 points against them. They could have been looking ahead for this game today. So I think this game is a very live dog. I get this line up to +3, 3.5. I'm not sitting on a 2.5 on any game. I'd make sure you get +3 or 3.5. I like Ole Miss at home. I think they beat Georgia in this game. I just got this vibe, and when I get these vibes and I do my work, I just like to play a lot.
All right. So, in contrast to the professor who says, go ahead and lay the points with Georgia, you're taking Ole Miss and getting some points in that same matchup. Now, I believe you're in agreement because you also have an opinion on the BYU Utah game.
Yeah.
And I think you're on the same side as a professor in this one.
Well, is there a better team in the country that's as balanced as this BYU team? 4-0 at home, 4-0 on the road, solid as can be on both sides of the ball. Playing against a team that's lost 4 straight games in a row, the wheels are definitely falling off the bus there. There's no doubt about it. This Utah team is on a steady decline where BYU has just been moving in the right direction. I mean, I can't see anything wrong with them. And to be honest with you, I mean, yeah, the line's right. It's 4. It might have dropped down to 3. But I just like the way BYU is playing. They got a dynamite quarterback. Matter of fact, he's a Jew playing on BYU. Can you imagine a Jewish quarterback? They call him BY Jew up there, I guess. Yeah, he's a Jewish quarterback, and he's leading the team. They don't make many mistakes. Let me tell you something. BYU doesn't give games away so easily. You got to earn your W's when you play this team, and they've proven it all year by going 8-0 and beating everyone in front of them. So I like BYU in this matchup. I just think Utah right now is like on that steady downcline. I like the teams that are playing well this time of the year. They got a lot more to play for, going for a perfect season, getting into that bowl picture. So I love the line. I bring that game down to -3. I jump on BYU. I definitely agree with the professor on this one.
Professor not enamored with what he's seen from Utah so far, even though apparently both you and the professor are going against some of the sharp money in this one and saying that BYU is the play. All right, we're going to move to the pros with Scotty M. And you're looking at the Pittsburgh-Washington matchup, one of the marquee matchups on a slate. I was talking with our good friend Ian Eagle, who's going to be calling the game on another show earlier this week, and he thinks that this represents a classic here because it has so many implications as to what's going to happen in the future with playoff and Super Bowl qualities and qualifications. So what do you think? Pittsburgh and Washington. What are you looking at there, Scotty?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it, this game being that big of a game, but right now, obviously, Pittsburgh 6-2 made the change at the quarterback, brought Russell Wilson in, perfect situation. Seems like Mike Tomlin is a great chess player. He makes all the right moves. This guy just seems like the moves he makes, they just find ways to build up some confidence and put the team in a good direction. I like the way they're playing right now. I think the defense is going to be the key to the Steelers' victory on this game because, as I said earlier, when I went against Jaden Daniels when they played Baltimore. I thought the Baltimore defense would scheme it up a little bit and cause a little, him to have a little flush them a little bit. He did make a couple of mistakes in the game, but he did play very well though. But I think the same thing's going to happen here. Now you run into the number A1 defense with this Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think they know how to fluster these young quarterbacks. I just like the spot. Pittsburgh's playing well on the road, 3-1 on the road. Yes, Washington's won all their games at home. They haven't played a defense like this, and I think turnovers and key mistakes are going to be the difference in this game to make the outcome. And I like the Steelers as a live dog in the game. I really do. 2-0 with Wilson. They're playing real well. They're finding ways to move the ball. And I think it's going to be tough for Washington to keep up with the Steelers if the Steelers continue their movement with the ball and keeping themselves with the mistakes. They'll have extra possessions. So I like the Steelers +3. I'd get this line to +3. I think they're a live dog. I think they can go in there and beat Washington outright.
All right, and you're going to wrap things up in the NFL. You're looking at and another friend of ours, Ron Borges. I used to a big boxing writer from the Boston Globe back in the day, and still follow sports. And he was putting comments in as the game was on between your Patriots and the Tennessee Titans, and labeling it as one of the ugliest games he's ever seen in the history of the National Football League. And you're going to take advantage of that even though Tennessee prevailed in that one in overtime. But you think the Chargers are going to be too much fun this week?
I don't see how they keep up with him. Herbert's playing real well right now. It seems like Harbaugh is moving that team in the right direction. They got good momentum going. Their defense is showing up. There's no better defense in the league. Believe it or not, they're only allowing 12 and a half points a game. The other side's allowing 26 a game. Right there's like 13 and a half points between the defenses. You're playing on the road against a team that's coming into it, starting to go on that upward momentum right now against the team that's just flatlining it at best. I mean, if they're going like this, mainly going downward. So I love the Chargers in this spot. I mean, you give me Justin Herbert against Mason Rudolph, I'll take it all day long, especially on the road. And when the Chargers just came off a big win, they got some momentum behind them now. They got a winning record. I think they take advantage. This is the perfect spot, in my opinion, for them to have a blowout. And the line on the game's about 7.5. I definitely don't like sitting on 7.5. I bring this game down to under 7.5 to probably 6.5. I think they win this game by 12 to 18 points. I just don't see how Tennessee can stay with a team like this at this point in time based on what I'm looking at.
Horrendous performance there against the Patriots, even though they ended up on top in OT. All right, how can people follow you, Scotty M? We like to give this information out because naturally you have left quite an impression on the people here to watch the show. License to Steal. So how can people get your information?
Best way to find me is on Instagram. To be honest, that's the best way to do it. You can DM me, send me a message, whatever you're interested in. I'm here for you. I'm looking to give you that winning edge. I mean, this is what I do, guys. I've been doing this since the late 80s. The late 80s. So this is not the first rodeo. This has been a long, long rodeo. So if you want to find out what we're up to, we put out free stuff all the time. Go to my Instagram. It's SM Sports Picks, Picks. If you're interested in other things I'm doing, shoot me a DM. I'll personally get back to you and help you out.
All right, sounds good. Scotty, always a pleasure, my friend. Good luck with all your plays. We flip-flopped a couple of things here, but Mike Jones has made it. So we asked Troy West if he could come on early, so we're going to go ahead and pop him in here. Troy, good to have you on the program, my friend. Always a pleasure. Troy West out of Seattle, Washington, although I believe you're hanging out in the desert right now.
We are. We're at the DraftKings Scottsdale. Beautiful, beautiful spot here. Lots of TVs, indoor, outdoor area. It's a great spot if you've never been here, Defo. Highly recommend it.
All right, you might have to move your camera just a little bit because we're only kind of getting half your face in the picture, and we definitely want to see your handsome mug here on the show on License to Steal. There you go, looking good. All right, let's get right into it. And Mike Jones is going to follow you on the program here, and there's conflict already among our handicappers on a couple of games, and we have a game here that I know you like, that the professor is in stark contrast to you on. So you're looking first up at Cal, which you follow very closely. And don't you have some familiarity or contact with the coach at Cal?
Yes, sir. Yes, the guy was out at the University of Washington for a long time. Justin Wilcox played a coach at the University of Oregon, longtime defensive coordinator. He's done an outstanding job at Cal. I think he's still waiting for that premier head job. I think he's waiting for the right job, but this is a guy that's consistently wins 6 to 7 games, which doesn't sound impressive. But when you're talking about Cal Berkeley, a school that's very hard to get into, he's done a phenomenal job. They're coming off a 44 to 7 win at home against Oregon State. They're coming off the bye week. They're going into Wake Forest. I get it. It's a long travel game, but they're 7-point favorites for a reason. The Demon Deacons just aren't that good this year. I love Cal in this spot. They're going on the road. They're coming off a lot of momentum. They're rested. They're healthy. Give me Cal in a big way. I think they win this game handily, 31 to 13.
All right, this is what I love about this racket. Is the professor gave an eloquent dissertation about exactly how Wake Forest was going to dominate in this game, and that taking 7 there was a sweet spot. So we have some conflict there with Troy West and the professor. Troy liking Cal -7 against Wake Forest. You're looking at a couple of pro games for us this week as well. You're going to start it out, and I think there's some unanimity on this one. You like San Francisco. Laying what was 5 and a hook against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, Tampa Bay coming off the short week. They looked really good against Kansas City. Really should have won that game. I thought Todd Boyles should have gone for 2 for the win instead of trying to go to overtime against Patrick Mahomes. That never seems to work out, yet he tested it and and failed. Short week for Tampa Bay. You look at, again, overtime, they played almost an extra quarter there. And now you're on the short week against 49er team coming off the bye week. Christian McCaffrey's back in the arsenal. I know he'll probably be on a pitch count, but they've got their 1-2 punch now with McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. They're getting healthy at the right time. And the 49ers know this is their playoff push. They got to get going. I think Tampa Bay's got to be exhausted, absolutely exhausted from that game Monday night in Kansas City. Short week. Give me the 49ers. I think they handle them. Give me the 49ers in a big way. 28-13. I'll take the 49ers in Tampa Bay.
All right, I was face down in the gutter out here. A1A is a street right outside my house there. I was hoping to get run over by a construction truck or anybody after Philadelphia loses from up 22-0 and can't cover the spread against Jacksonville. Almost loses the game outright in the final minutes. Took an interception in the end zone to stave off Jacksonville's just outrageous rally that they had against them. They end up losing by 5. Not good enough if you had Philly. And we're laying a 7 and a hook. But you like them to come right back and knock off a Dallas team that is badly depleted and seems to be in the usual state of disarray.
Yeah, I cover this Dallas team probably closer than any other team that I cover. I've been a diehard Cowboys fan since I remember football. This team's about as bad a disarray as they've ever been. I think the players want McCarthy out. I think they expect him to be out. Mike Zimmer's done a horrendous job on the defensive side of the ball. They have no running game. Cooper Rush gets the nod. Who's he going to throw to? If CeeDee Lamb plays, which I think he will play, he's playing with a sprained shoulder. You have no run game. You have no offensive line. The defense still very much banged up, even if Parsons comes back. Philadelphia loves putting a pounding on Dallas. Nick Sirianni loves putting a pounding on Dallas. I just can't see Philadelphia not winning this game by 10 plus. I'll take the Eagles in a pretty big way. 31-14. I'll take the Eagles.
All right, Troy going with Cal laying 7. San Francisco laying 5 and a hook in the Buccaneers matchup. Philadelphia laying 7 against the Dallas Cowboys. Any thought, just off the record here, but any opinion on the game tonight? An interesting matchup, Ravens and the Bengals.
I've gone back and forth with it, but I've seen enough of this Bengals defense to know they can't stop anybody. I think Deontay Johnson's going to have a big game tonight. They didn't use him much in their last outing. I think he's going to be a big key point tonight for Lamar Jackson. Bengals can't stop anybody. Give me the Ravens minus 6.5. I think they win this game by 10 plus. I really like the over here. I think it's sitting at 53 and a half.
Yes.
You're going to see a lot of points. Joe Burrow's playing really good football, so it's hard to go against him. 5 touchdowns last week. He's starting to connect, but the Ravens at home, this is a good spot for him. I think the Ravens win this game. It's a close one, 31-23. I'll take the Ravens.
All right, and you're practically giving the inside information that you have away with this $7 a week proposition. Explain that to us, and then give us the contact information for people that want to use you as a source for trying to guide them through some winning wagers.
Yeah, we can't go free, unfortunately. Got to make a little bit of money, but 7 days for $7. I truly believe it's the best bargain in the industry. We cover all sports. We cover UFC, college basketball, college football, hockey, you name it. It's not just me. I'm not a one-man band. We've got a full group of guys putting our heads together, trying to get the public winning bets. That's TroyWins.com. The Instagram is It's Troy West.
All right, is the golf trip over? You're heading back to Seattle? What's going on?
One more day. It's, like I said, beautiful 75 degrees out here in Scottsdale. One more day to enjoy it, Defo.
All right, watch out for those cacti out there in the middle of the fairway.
Yes, sir.
Always is an inhibiting factor if you're trying to play in the desert there. All right, have a great time. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Troy West, ladies and gentlemen, joining us here on the program. All right, we're going to bring him in. This man's been on the road. He's been up early this morning doing some handicapping with us, and here he is back again to round out the show, License to Steal this afternoon. We welcome to the show our good friend, Mr. Mike Jones. Mike, how are you?
Great to be with you. Fantastic. I see we're going a little bit with them today. I see a couple of bets we've heard that I'm on top of. So it should be fun.
We've had some selections that were mutual, and at the same time, we've had a couple of conflicts among our handicappers. But that's what it's all about here. We'll see who comes out on top, and trying to help people formulate ideas and get a little bit of a guide for their own betting strategies on these games, and give you whatever logic that we can as well. But what was interesting, though, we were talking this morning on another show, and I didn't realize that you also had the same. I have an obsession my entire life with ring announcers, stadium
Yeah.
announcers, track announcers. I've loved following that. I love the sound of it. I love the different styles that people exhibit. There have been many classics in that category, and not the least of which is Bob Shepard. And I was telling you the story about how I met Bob Shepard. Actually, I came in conjunction with one of my better calls in terms of a winning wager. So I was doing basketball games for a few years. I was doing the games on the radio with a total degenerate, Sonny Hirsch, who was a longtime fabled announcer here in South Florida. Did the Hurricanes, I think, for the better part of 30 some odd years, football, basketball, and baseball. So I'm working with him, and the Canes had lost, I think, some ridiculous number of Big East games to start their Big East presence. And I think they'd lost like 17 in a row or something to start their Big East existence. And I just had a funny feeling. I was watching them that they seemed to be looking kind of good that previous couple of games. And I thought, well, you know what? They're getting 17 points. I'm going to go ahead and play them on the money line against the St. John's team. That year featured Felipe Lopez. I don't know if you remember Felipe Lopez.
Yeah, I do.
So of course, it turns out that the at Alumni Hall, not at the Garden, but at Alumni Hall, when St. John's played there, the stadium announcer was the great Bob Shepard, legendary guy, did all those Yankee games, and was renowned for the repetition there, where he would introduce Derek Jeter, and it would be Derek Jeter, number two, number two, and he always, I thought it was a sound system, that had the echo. And so I get introduced by Sonny to Bob Shepard. I'm overwhelmed. I can't believe I'm meeting one of my announcing idols. And I say, Bob, I can't believe it's such a pleasure to meet you. Everything you do is great. I've followed you your whole career. I love the way you do this. And he goes, thank you. Thank you. I said, fuck, the guy says everything twice. It wasn't the sound system. But you were a big fan of Bob Shepard. A lot of people would think this is an obscure reference, but he's legendary.
I think when you grow up in that area, Yankee Stadium, and then for me, the Giants as much as the Yankees, working with the team in '84, hearing that voice per play, and I would make jokes, but I do impressions, a little bit of old announcers.
You had a great impression of Shepard.
I did, yeah. For the Giants, it was ball carried by Riggins, tackled by Taylor. 2nd and 9 on the 21. And that's exactly what he did in that voice.
Yeah.
And it was just, I can remember, oh my God, it brings me back to childhood. So when I said that's a Bob Shepard reference this early in the morning, I said, wow, who would have thought that? That was 1,000,000 to 1 shot in the book to say Bob Shepard was coming my way today. So great.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. I never forgot that because I had been under the mistaken impression all those years that it was a Yankee Stadium sound system that had him repeating everything.
Right.
And it turned out in that instance, he just happened to talk that way. He was like Johnny Two Times.
And he passed away, I think, in the early 2000s. And Derek Jeter had such an affection for him that he actually kept him throughout his career and used Bob Shepard's voice to call out his name. He was the only Yankee player to do so. So I thought that's always a little tidbit for diehard Yankee fans in the younger generation to know that he was passed away probably 10 or 12 years and Jeter still used his voice to introduce him at the plate. Very remarkable.
He made it to a big number. I mean, I think he lived to be 98. And he's one of those guys.
Yeah, 98, right. He did live in the late 90s. That's true.
You have to admire because he died literally and went to his grave doing the thing that he loved. It was a lot like Bob Murphy, I think, checked out while he was in the announcer's booth doing a Met game. And you're thinking, just do this shit right to the wire for as long as you can.
You probably put 3 guys in my lifetime of voices that you can't get over. The Howard Cosell voice, the Bob Shepard, and the John Facenda. You put those 3 guys of legends growing up, and you just knew something good was going on when Bob Shepard was on the mic. And that's growing up in New York, sports fan, Shepard's legendary.
And Facenda, a classic, of course, the original voice and longtime voice of NFL films. Yeah. These brave young men. Here to play a child's game. He was phenomenal. But, there's the old joke, though, and we actually experimented with this on the air a few times, where almost anything that you read over NFL music, NFL films music, sounds great. So we would have different guys come on, fabled announcers, guys that have been well established, and have them read like a Chinese menu, Chinese restaurant menu. But if you put NFL Films music under it, it sounds dynamic. It really does. Goo goo guy pen. I mean, it was just great stuff. But
Not to bore the listeners, but there's another legendary New York guy with Jim Gordon, and I used to do
yeah,
imitation. In the 1984 season, I worked for the Giants. I was equipment manager. We were traveling in California, and I was sitting in a restaurant, and over the shoulder came Dick Lynch, who was the color radio guy with Jim Gordon, and he said in his voice and right into my ear what he wanted to drink. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I said, oh my God. I turned around. It was Jim Gordon right behind me. And I never heard that voice other than doing a game. And then he asked for, hey, Dick, I'll have an Irish whiskey. And I went, whoa. Like, he goes, are you okay? And I'm like, it's Jim Gordon. But like when you hear a legendary announcer come up, and Dick Stockton was another one I ran into in the 90s down in Boca. He lived in Boca West, and he came in to the bar, and I wasn't paying attention, and I was bartender at the time, and he said something. I'm like, is that Dick Stockton? I looked up, it was him right there. So I think as a diehard sports fan, the announcers are what we sit and belong and bring the games to, and what we announce, because they're the ones that gave us the vision, especially the radio guys. And Jim Gordon was a big radio guy for the Giants, and I followed him forever. But yeah, that's great. I mean, great memories and stuff.
You're probably one of the few guys that actually not only would get the Shepard reference, but then be able to do a very quality impression of Bob Shepard as well.
Yeah.
Let's get into some action here, Mike Jones. And you were also, well, you had a nice theory on this Baltimore game. It was a little bit of a different extrapolation or sort of a dissection, I guess, of the entire game. But you had a pretty interesting number about Lamar Jackson.
Okay, so Baltimore Ravens 8-0 on Thursday night games at home under John Harbaugh, 21-3 in primetime games at home under John Harbaugh. So you sit there, you take a look at those kind of stats, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to another stat which I found even more startling. So Lamar Jackson in his 71 starts is 47-23-1 in first half against the line. So last week I hear this, I'm like, wow, and the Raiders, they were winning up 14 at the half and they covered. I mean, not the Raiders. They played
Ravens.
Sorry, late last week. But the Raiders game earlier in the year, I remember that as being their one loser. So I know the Ravens get heat about blowing leads at home and things that happen, but they seem to have a great percentage at halftime. So I ran with it last week against Denver. I'm sorry, and then this week I'm going to run with it again. I'm going to take a -3 and try and go with the numbers play more than just an outright pick.
All right, first half. You're taking the Ravens tonight, -3 in their matchup against Cincinnati. Naturally, with Cincinnati at 4-5, they're starting to really, be behind the eight ball when it comes to the number. Going to have to win, a ridiculous percentage of the rest of their games. So a huge one tonight. Baltimore looking like a Super Bowl contender. Go ahead.
Yeah, with the injuries and what the previous handicappers said, they've been such a good home team, and and then with Orlando Brown and T. Higgins, and the back Moss being all hurt, that this is going to be a tough spot. But it's a game also too that it's a tough game to pick. These division games, these teams are this close, they know each other. Baltimore's had some success there, so I'm going on a trendy math pick that's 68% chance that I'm going to go with Baltimore there for the.
Baltimore's caused a lot of survivor pool guys to jump off the bridge. Take a long walk off the Fabled Short Pier when they lost in week number 2 outright. That crushed a lot of people. Yeah. And then I would imagine, even if you were clever and you said, let me save the Ravens for a better spot, you couldn't have thought there was any way in hell that they were going to lose straight up to Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns. And sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, they do just that. So Mike Jones going with the Ravens first half, based on this number, 47-23 with Lamar Jackson coming out on top and covering spreads in the first half, -3 in the first half tonight against Cincinnati. You're also, you've got some balls going this week, that's for sure. I mean, not just the ones that are being thrown in the air, but the ones that are down there just float away.
I think when you handicap the NFL, it's never what they did last week. It's kind of go back 2 weeks and look at what teams are doing and seeing how competitive they are. So the Colts make the change of quarterback, and we watch the game Sunday night for the world to see, and we see that they're up 7-0 in the first half, and they got a defensive touchdown. Their offense is struggling, but they got Taylor back, and the wide receivers are back, and you just kind of see something. I just think that was a rough spot. Minnesota coming after 2 losses. They had the extra 10 days, so maybe that wasn't a wrong spot for the Colts spot. Well, I think I like them this week, and I'll tell you why.
And they're playing the Buffalo Bills, too.
They are. Buffalo's laying
opponent.
4 on the road. When I saw the number, I'm like, wow. I like what I saw out of the interior defense of Indianapolis last week, getting Buckner back and Kenny Moore's back. They're getting a little healthy defensively. They struggle with these top number one wide receivers. Jefferson went a little crazy last night. But if Coleman and Amari Cooper are out, that kind of leaves the receivers a little depleted. And I kind of like the situation where a little more ball control, a little more running, get Jonathan Taylor going. I kind of like him as a home dog here, +4. Buffalo coming off a big division win. Miami gave them all they want, goes down to the wire, has to win with a late field goal. But in the middle of that game, Colts, because what do they got next week? They're playing the Chiefs, their arch rival, team that's knocked them out of the playoffs for a couple times. So are they looking past this game a little bit? Maybe, I get the backdoor cover, maybe even win the game. So I'm on Indianapolis +4 here.
It's funny, too, because this Tyler Bass 61-yard field goal, they were doing anything in their power not to have him on the roster for that game. I think they even brought in a couple of the Grammatica brothers to do some kicking before to see if they might make a change there. But they ended up, very fortunately, winning that game on that 61-yard try by a very inconsistent Tyler Bass. All right, you're also looking at this 49er game, and I believe you're on the same side of this thing as Troy West. 49ers laying 5 on the hook.
And I'll tell you why. I think getting McCaffrey back I think these big boosts, like in all sports, give me a superstar back. I think that initial game, they're going to get a little rise. I think they had a bye week. A bye week with 4 days. And what I mean by this is that it's a little bye that they had the week off, but they had 10 days, I think, to play or whatever, that going up against a team off a Monday night game. So Tampa plays an overtime Monday night game, has a tough game, overtime, a lot of running, a lot of physical play on their defense. Now they're going into one of the more physical teams that you'll see. Numbers kind of high to take them on the road. Baker's kept them in games. No Godwin, no Evans. Just seems a little depleted. I think they put a huge effort up Monday night. I think the short week comes back and bites him a little bit. Juwan Jennings is supposed to play. Deebo Samuel's back. I just like the 49ers in this spot, and I like them big.
Yeah, Todd Bowles doesn't overwhelm me as a game day coach, even though Tampa Bay's had some success at different times this year. And like you said, played real tough last week in a losing effort. But he probably has the same look that like Kamala Harris had on her face, I think, when those early results came in from Kentucky, and with 1% of the vote counted in one state, it looked like it was already fucking over for her. So and he kind of has that bewildered look like Mike McDaniel's been showing on the sideline most of the time. So San Francisco trying to gear up at 4-4. You like them. Troy West likes them, laying 5.5 in this game on the road against the Buccaneers. And you're also in agreement with Troy, I believe, on this one, as you like Philadelphia to annihilate Dallas in this.
Actually, is funny you say that. It's actually Scotty M's I'm with. I'm actually
Scotty M. Yeah.
Steelers. Yeah. So here's what I think of the Pittsburgh-Washington game. Being, I follow the NFC East, being the giant guy that I am. I love Washington, and I always think that teams that Alvar play a little bit better than they have been. Washington has Carolina. They beat the Giants who win in a closer game. They have the Bears, which a game they should have lost, and get a big boost with the Hail Mary. Now they run into a top-notch defense. They're going to get a lot of pressure off the edge, what they've been avoiding. Cam Hayward in the middle might cause a little bit of problems for the middle. Are they going to be able to run the ball? I'm not sure. Is this going to be a game that they're going to be able to pressure? I think that Daniels gets pressure, and we see what happens. On the other side of the ball, the Giants ran for 148 yards in the first half last week against Redskins. Najee Harris, high-quality back. They get the center back. Is coming back for them this week. I kind of look at Pittsburgh being able to move the ball. Average 21 points a game with Justin Fields. They're averaging over 30 with Russell Wilson. I feel he's bringing a little chemistry to the offense. They grab Mike Williams in a trade. A lot of things turning to me a lot toward the Steelers, getting a little vibe, a little momentum. And I just think that Washington's on that streak, and I like getting the 3 here or 2.5. I think they moved it off 3, and I have +3 earlier. So maybe the sharps are thinking off there. I love when games, if I'm on that side of 3 and I see that 2.5 later in the week, that kind of is always something that makes me feel pretty good about my side of my pick here. So I'm with Scotty M here, and I like the Steelers in this spot.
Yeah, I led you into the wrong game there. I was looking at Philadelphia -7 in Dallas, but yeah, Pittsburgh +2 and a hook
Yep.
in their game against the Commanders.
Last week we were 2-1, and who got us? The Jacksonville comeback. We're sitting there 22-0. It's going
Oh
to
my God!
call Defo Monday and say I'm 3-0, but I didn't do it because I know that's the jinx. But ended up 2-1, so we'll hopefully keep it running today and maybe get a 4-0 run for us.
Yeah, have you delved into any college basketball yet? Because it's always interesting early in the year.
I watched it a little bit. I watched the Gonzaga Baylor game late Monday night after the the Manning cast. I kind of get into the Mannings, listen to what they talk about, breaking down the game a little bit. And I love when Belichick's on there in the first half. And I actually knew Bill when I worked with the Giants. He was a defensive coordinator when I was there in the early 80s. And so I kind of get into that. So, yeah, right after that, I see that Gonzaga was playing Baylor. So I kind of in there just didn't know what to do. Always take the dog and I get blown out. But very interested to see what Gonzaga is doing. I think Baylor's not going to be as tough as they are. They have the young kid from Miami in a transfer, and they look like they're running the offense through him. And I think Baylor's got a little growing up to do. But, yeah, we're going to get into the college basketball probably a little bit more after Thanksgiving and, and watch the Maui Classics and things like that I always like to watch and when it's going around the clock. But, yeah, we'll get into some basketball pretty soon here.
Yeah, you have to watch for extended garbage time in these early season matchups and try to figure, okay, once they unload everybody on the bench, which way is this going to go? And as it turned out,
what? The handicappers really should know that early on, a lot of these teams that you're going to see get numbers now don't get numbers when the season gets in the middle of the season. After they get in December and some of these regular season conference games, these teams don't get it. So you're really seeing some tough for the handicappers, for the lines makers to make it, and a little edge for the handicappers if you do some studying. So I recommend a guy who digs hard into college basketball and understands the portal and transfers. I think it's harder for the actual bookmaker to set a more accurate line than some handicappers. I know a few out west that do very well at this time of the year. So it's something good to watch. So we'll hopefully get some information like that for us in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I would imagine a little bit of research could go a long way in trying to figure out, especially the new configurations of teams with the transfer portal, makes it even more. Even the coaches have no idea what the hell they have half the time. So we shall see. All right, Mike, always a pleasure. Where can people find your stuff if they want to follow your picks?
Picks for Profits, PIX4profits.com. Weekly packages. We give our money back on our best bet, as well as the Big Gunner podcast, Everything New York Giants, and we're giving out games there for free where you can hear a little bit update. I'll handicap a few games, the Pick 5 contests out in Vegas and things like that we talk about. So you can find us those two outlets.
All right. Now, normally if you pop a cork on a bottle of champagne after a win, when you pick the right side in a full ball game, do you have a split for the halftime score that you're looking at tonight? I mean, you're going to get a little half bottle out there?
You know what it is? I might start off with a little Red Bull and something small and get only the champagne when the big win is. Or if I double up, sometimes I'll take the first half in the game, and if I get two, for sure the champagne cracks there.
All right, sounds good. Mike, always a pleasure, my friend. Have a good week, and thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks, Jeff. Always my pleasure. Thank you.
That's Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen, as we try to figure out. We did have some agreement, and we had some dispute on the program today. We're going to bring Toby back in here to close things out with us as we try to figure out exactly where to go with all of these selections. Did anything stand out to you, Toby? I know you might have been dozing off there during the middle of the show or gone outside and had a smoke, but did anything strike you? We had a disagreement on the Ole Miss Georgia game. I don't know if you have an opinion on that one. Ole Miss, for some reason, the way they fell apart after they were just exhibiting the clubbing of seals in their early ball games. Maybe that is an unfair assessment of Lane Kiffin because he was probably dealing with an inferior team when he was taking on these top 5 teams. It is a Franklin-like number that you see at Penn State. I don't know if it was an overwhelming cause for alarm, but do you have a thought on that one? Ole Miss and Georgia. Is Georgia due to get tagged with a loss, or are they finally on the right path and maybe going to go out and win another national championship?
I think it's more they're on the path for another national championship. I think once you get into November with this team, Kirby gets them right. I think Carson Beck is looking pretty good. And I think, Ole Miss is just – it's been too many question marks, I feel like, for him. Is Jackson Dart really going to go out there and perform? I mean, I feel like that's not always something we know going into the game. And I feel like Georgia right now is just clicking. I feel like they were more due for a loss earlier in the season than they are now. And I think that now it's more of making a push to the national championship.
How much concern should we have if you were following a team and they didn't necessarily get a good shake in the original college football playoff rankings? That's largely subject to change, obviously, because you have a couple of these teams are actually going to be tested, which we're still waiting for Miami to see if they're going to meet a real test. They have Georgia Tech this week, but did you have any thoughts on the way the rankings came out? We shook out.
I mean, I haven't had much of thought about it. I mean, I think it's really cool just having the 12-team playoff as a whole. I just think it opens it up so much more. And in a year, especially like this, where we don't have really a clear front runner, I think this is the best year for it. I didn't really have, many thoughts about the rankings themselves. I'm not a big college football guru, big baseball, college basketball guy, but I'm very interested in just how this whole 12-team layout's going to actually play out when we get there.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Still a lot to be decided. And hopefully you guys got some insight into some of these games that are upcoming on the slate for beginning tonight and then all through the weekend with college and pro football. We thank our guys for joining us on the show as they do every week here on License to Steal. I thank you, Toby. Always a great job. Always a pleasure being here in the Bleacher Brothers format on the Bleacher Brothers Network. And for everybody connected with the show and everybody connected with Bleacher Brothers, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time on the next edition of License to Steal.